SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Today, my topic is classroom management. In this presentation, I am going to cover certain points which are like concept of classroom management, various definitions given by experts on classroom management, basic questions that do occur in our mind when we think of classroom management, then need of classroom management, then various approaches to be used in classroom management, and at the end I would like to focus on certain tips for effective classroom management. At the end of this session, I would wish that every trainee would be in position to understand what exactly classroom management is, what sort of questions do arise, and how to tackle those questions so that effective teaching learning can take place and instructional objectives of teaching can be met. See, first question that comes in our mind is, what does a teacher do in classroom? છેલ્લે શિક્ષક ક્લાસમાં જઈને કરે છે શું? આમ સામાન્ય રીતે ઘણા બધા ક્લાસિફિકેશન હોઈ શકે, બટ વન ઓફ ધેમ ઇઝ કે શિક્ષક શું કરે છે? શિક્ષક એક તો ભણાવે છે. શિક્ષક હી ટીચ કન્ટેન્ટ ઓર સબ્જેક્ટ મેટર, એ વિષય વસ્તુ ભણાવવા જાય છે. પણ વિષય વસ્તુ ભણાવવા માટે શું જોઈએ? વેન હી હેઝ ટુ ટીચ, એટ ધેટ ટાઈમ હી હેઝ ટુ ટીચ ઇન સર્ટન એન્વાયરમેન્ટ, in certain setup. If that setup is not working properly, if that setup is not conducive, if that setup is not congenial, if that setup is not something that is healthy to deliver that content, then definitely hindrance and obstacles will come in teaching that content. So here today's focus would be what should be the environment so that learning can take place more cohesive way, more easily, more freely and more comfortably to learners. See, now when we think of classroom management, certain questions come in our mind. First question is, when will effective learning take place? Because our job is not simply to go in class, deliver that content and come back without thinking about the effect of it. So first question comes in mind, when will effective learning take place? And answer is, if students learn and participate actively. Actively is to be underlined, because if they are active, they will learn more, they will understand more, they will comprehend more, they will be in position to apply that learning in novel situations in future. So answer of the first question is that if students learn and participate in classroom actively, the result would be that teaching will become effective, teaching will become something where teacher and learner both would be enjoying the process of learning. Second question that comes in the mind is, when does students be able to participate actively? First question was, when it is effective. It is effective when learning is taking place actively. But what is to be done, or when will students be able to participate actively? So answer is, if proper environment is facilitated to them. If environment is threatening one, if environment is such in which learners are not in position to feel safe to answer, feel safe to question to teacher, then how will they respond, how will they ask question and how will they answer? And we might have seen in certain classes, teacher comes in class, teacher teaches blah 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 this and that, but finally what happens? Sometimes some students are there, they don't understand what has been taught. Even teacher comes, teacher leave the classes. Even students they think that okay, whatever was taught was fine, but it was not our cup of tea. It was not the content that was difficult. Difficult was, or problem was in the delivery of the content. So second question was, when will students be able to participate actively? Answer is only when learning environment is such, only when proper environment is given to learners to learn. Now, environment, we talk about environment. Who will provide this environment? That is the question. Basically, there are various components, there are various various factors that affect learning environment, but one of the most influential factor is teacher himself. So, teacher is responsible, teacher has to provide that environment so that learners can learn and instructional objectives can be accomplished at the end. Because finally, the purpose of arranging teaching learning process is to accomplish certain instructional objectives at the end of the class, and for that what is required? Teacher has to create the environment in which teaching learning can take place effectively. So, finally, who is responsible? We are responsible as a teacher community to provide appropriate environment. Now, how will teacher facilitate environment? Okay, things are, or responsibility has been shouldered by the teacher, but then let us go bit micro way and see how will teacher facilitate this environment. See, in order to facilitate the environment, teacher has to keep instructional objectives constantly in mind, and he should focus on accomplishment of learning objectives. Fine. If he goes in class, but he is not in position to trap those objectives, to keep those objectives in mind, to focus on those objectives, what will happen? Maybe classroom or teaching learning may go somewhere else. It may not be that whatever was planned for the class might have not been achieved too. So, here teacher has to be focused on instructional objectives of that particular session. That will help to facilitate proper environment, because if teacher will talk something else other than what has to be taught, what will happen? Students may not take interest, and once their interest is lost, believe me, classroom management and entire process is lost. Second is by using resources properly. If teacher can use resources properly, all available resources properly, he can manage to handle classroom in appropriate way. When we talk of using resources properly, suppose a teacher has been using PowerPoint presentation, he should be able to handle that in proper way. If he has assigned certain responsibility to certain learners to role play or to do certain activity, they are to go in appropriate way in the guidance of, under the guidance of teacher in proper way. Then only teacher would be, or classroom teaching learning process would be in the direction of accomplishing learning objectives. Then fine, it is very easy to say that teacher is there, he has to use resources, he has to accomplish learning objectives he has set before going in class, but then he is going to teach learners, live human being. He has to deal with human being, he is not dealing only with material. So, what will happen? There would be various type of students. Some may be bright, some may be slow learner, although we should not say that there may be slow learners, but maybe the students with different needs, with different challenges, with different abilities, because individual differences are to be there. Individual differences are implied in nature. So, maybe certain things may go in such a way that some students may not respond properly, or even if they respond properly, even if they respond not properly, but they respond more, what may happen? There may be disturbance in the class. So, teacher has to take care and has to minimize disturbances in classroom, because suppose one student is there, one or two students, if they are creating disturbance in the classroom, what will happen? They may divert the attention of rest of the learners. So, they are to be handled tactfully, they are to be handled in such a way that other learners' goal of learning may not get affected. And finally, by maintaining the discipline among learners, it would be possible for teacher to provide environment and teach content in the direction of accomplishment of learning objectives. Now, I have some definitions over here. I will just show you, and at the after those what components have been covered in those definitions, I have summarized them too at the end. So, let us just go through with the definitions and keywords given over here. First definition is classroom management is teacher's strategy. See, it is teacher's strategy, means here teacher should be skilled enough to implement that strategy, that create and maintain an organized and congenial or pleasing environment, learning environment. So, what is there? In fact, classroom management will go the way teacher will implement his strategies, and it is in the hand of teacher. If he goes in proper way, in planned way, if he can execute his plan properly and all that, then only it would be possible that he will be able to provide proper learning environment. And if classroom goes in proper way, believe me, most of the chances discipline would automatically be there. Students become indisciplined only when when as a teacher we are not in position to focus on for what we are there. So, teachers classroom management is teachers strategy that create and maintain an organized and pleasant environment, learning environment and discipline, so that students can play active role. Here term active role is very important. Environment should be such that learners can start participating in it, and learners can play active role. When we talk of active role, they should be engaged in the process. If they are not engaged, it means they might be engaged somewhere, because brain is there, brain will not remain free. Generally brain functions at its speed. So, it is the we are the teacher who have to take care of this thing. We have to keep them engaged in such a way that they can actively remain with teacher in classroom. So, classroom management is nothing but creating an environment that is to be created by teacher in such a way that learners can play active role, or learners can participate actively in that particular classroom. Second definition is classroom management refers to how a teacher controls the students' behavior. Here the term control, don't take it in negative sense. Here control means teacher has something in mind that my class should go in that way. Accordingly, he sets some rules for the class. In that direction, this control term has been used, so that class do not become class do not become such where learning do not take place, or where students do not listen him. That for that reason the term control has been used by Richard 1990. So, classroom management refers to again how a teacher controls the students' behavior, so that the teaching and learning process can happen effectively. Control does not mean punishment here, again mind well. Control has been, the term control has been used in shaping that particular environment in which learning can go, learning can take place and learner can participate effectively. So, again behavior of learners is to be controlled, is to be desirable in classroom, then only learning will take place and teacher has to take care of it. One more definition. Classroom management is a skill which requires the teacher to manage the time, space, resources and students' behavior in preparing a conducive learning environment. Again, same thing has been repeated here, not certain at only one point like time, space and resources, that has been elaborated in terms of what has been there, what is generally there in the classroom. Otherwise, it is like classroom management is a skill. That skill, who should be skillful here? Teacher should be skillful. So, classroom management is a skill, and why it has been called as a skill? Because every teacher cannot, every person cannot control class. Teacher is a trained person, he may be able to control that environment, control the learners, control that particular setup in proper way in the direction of instructional objectives. So, teacher is a person who is skilled in employing or in using time, space and resources in proper way and creating students' behavior in preparing a conducive learning environment. So, one new term, that skill has been introduced here. But one thing is there, that is classroom behavior, that is classroom, like I mean students' behavior. Students' behavior is in the center, and who is in the center to manage their behavior? We are as a teacher. Now, these are some extracts from these definitions. One is by managing and controlling students' behavior. Classroom management, how classroom management is possible? By managing and controlling students' behavior. Second, so that, why should we manage and control behavior? So that students can learn actively and effectively. Why should they learn actively and effectively? Just a minute. One is the teacher has to manage and control students' behavior. And why should he manage, why should he control behavior? So that students can learn actively